Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have another set of revenge stories for you. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Litterbug busted. So my last job, I worked at a construction company that had a fairly large yard/land as well as a warehouse. In the yard were many old storage trailers, probably around 30 to 40, just old semi-trailers that were old and not really roadworthy anymore, so they are or were used to store customers' building materials and machinery to be delivered on the job. So there's a fairly long dirt road out to the very back portion of the yard that isn't visible from the shop or warehouse. We mostly just keep our oldest and worst trailers out there before we get around to bringing them to the junkyard. But some of them are still used by customers and have equipment in them. One day in mid-March, I was instructed to head back there to check in a trailer for one of our customers. Now, this was after a really snowy winter, so there was a lot of dirty piles of snow everywhere and things like that. And more or less, we had no reason to go back there during the winter, as snow removal was so hard to stay on top of anyway. I hadn't been back there in a few months. So when I get back there, I'm pretty pissed when I see about 10 large black household trash bags in a big pile thrown underneath one of the trailers. This is a lot of effing trash, like a month's worth for a family of 5. At this point, raccoons or some other wildlife had gotten to them, and they were pretty ripped apart and thrown about as well. What a jerk. I'm pretty heated, and I go back to the warehouse to get some stuff to clean it up, gloves, a shovel, a big bin to scoop it in so I can grab it with the forklift. About a minute into scooping it up, I'm PO'd because it's under a trailer, so I have to bend down and basically crouch, and it's extra difficult/awkward to shovel. A light goes on, and I'm thinking any a-hole this dumb with this much trash certainly has thrown away some mail in this time period. Within 30 seconds, I find 3 pieces of mail with his name and address on it. I call the non-emergency police line and tell them someone's been dumping trash. Within a minute, a cop shows up, and we have a chat of how can I approach this short of driving to the dude's address and spreading this crap all over his lawn. What my petty revenge idea was. So the cop is the man and actually goes to the address, finds out the guy moved, went to the post office, finds his new address, and confronts him about it. Of course, the guy denies it, with some story about how it must have been his landlord after he moved out, and the cop basically asked him if he'd rather just clean it up or try to tell that story to a judge. So now that I knew he was going to be back to clean it up, I threw all the trash back under the trailer and ripped the bags up a little more so it was a bit more gross and unmanageable. The absolute best part was that the time he went back in the evening, it was torrentially downpouring with thunder and lightning, absolutely raining buckets. So he got to clean up his mess while me and 2 other officers watched him inside our nice, warm, dry vehicles while he got dumped on in very cold, very heavy rain. Haha, karma is a bee. And our next story. My uncle took revenge on behalf of my parents. As the title gives away, this didn't happen to me, but is the story of how my uncle avenged my parents. My parents had me when they were plenty young. They were not teens anymore, but had barely left that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college, and that was also when they had me. So while my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lives in the same area, and the college was not that far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. On occasion, they frequented a bar. A drunk guy there groped my mom and did not take a no as a no. My dad intervened and stopped the guy, and half an hour later, all seemed forgotten. The music was loud, the bar was crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He was bleeding profusely and collapsed. But in the press, semi-darkness, and over the music, no one knew who did it. My dad got taken to the hospital. He had a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He also couldn't see who had attacked him, and his memory between the alcohol and being hit in the head was also very fuzzy. Of course, they had considered the guy who'd harassed my mom, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to the moment, let alone have any evidence. So they pressed charges against unknown. There was virtually nothing anyone could do. Then a few days later, the piece of crap that had harassed my mom approached her on campus. Turns out he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments and left little doubt that it had been him that hit my dad in the face. And the piece of garbage let my mom know that my dad next time should mind his manners, and that the little touching he'd done didn't hurt anyone and wasn't that bad. And if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe more. Then the piece of crap went on his merry way. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad, his parents, but no one could do anything. It was a he said, she said deal after all, and my mom hadn't even gotten the guy's name. My mom cried a lot at the time and didn't know what to do. She also was afraid of going to classes or out alone. I honestly only remember that time very scarcely. I was just a little kid. But I can remember my dad in the hospital with his broken nose and my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do, and everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. This is where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a PI, and he was, of course, the last to hear the full story. But the moment he heard someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on the harassment, the assault, or the threats, having no evidence. My uncle had my mom point the guy out from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him, but then my uncle started to stalk that piece of human filth. My uncle took sick days, all his vacation, and invested every possible second to finding out everything about the harasser. My uncle even approached the pig in another bar and became drinking buddies with him. Over several weeks, my uncle had uncovered all manners of illicit behavior, possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs, theft, and a few other misdemeanors and small-time stuff, and my uncle could have put him away for that. But my uncle always said, when asked about it, that if he sent the a-hole to prison, it'd be for molesting my mom and hurting my dad. And that's what he did. One night, while out with his new buddy drinking, my uncle made the idiot piss drunk, and they landed in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, rattling off a list of illegal crap he was up to. My uncle had, of course, pretended to be a crook, too. Among the stories a-hole told was the story of how he groped some chick and brained her dude with a pitcher of beer. Now, something needs to be said. In my country, of course, recording someone in secret is illegal, and under some conditions, like if the police do it, it's not permissible as a piece of evidence in court. But as a PI, my uncle knew that law exactly. But paradoxically, the situation is different if it's not only audio but also video. And my uncle had the a-hole on camera confessing. The next day, my uncle turned himself into the police with all his collected evidence because secretly filming people was still a crime. Though the video could be used as evidence in court, as my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any other governmental agency. When the criminal trial and civil trial were over, the a-hole got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. My uncle got slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming the a-hole. Money well spent, he always said. What an uncle. Such dedication for his family. He's a true hero. And our next story. My wife got an eBay scammer arrested. This is an old story, but it's something I had pretty much forgotten about. This was in Christmas 2001, back when we still trusted the internets and eBay was a sure bet for getting a deal. We were looking for a nice gift for our 6-year-old and having limited funds thought that maybe a slightly used PS2 console would be awesome. We found a seller with a long history and a good rating that had a console and a dozen games with it for $300. Especially considering the games, this was a fantastic deal, maybe half off retail. The seller was mostly into selling sports cards, but he had a variety of other auctions, including lots of video games. It'd be our whole Christmas budget for him, but it was too good a deal to pass up. So we won the auction and sent payment. The seller replied with a variety of emails saying congratulations and he'll send it at the end of the week as he was out of town. Week goes by, we hear nothing. We emailed and he gave some excuse and asked for another day. We emailed again and he said he mailed it but didn't have the tracking number, yada yada yada. As it became clear that we had been scammed, we were pretty distraught, as that was our Christmas savings for our boy. My wife wouldn't let it go and has always been quite good at internet sleuthing, so she started looking through his eBay history and noted that while he'd been a solid A++++ seller for years, many poor reviews started flooding in. Many people eventually got the product or a refund, but it was taking longer and longer to resolve. She looked through Yahoo auctions, that was a thing then, and found a seller with a different name with the same items up for sale. Using that username, she was able to find an online dating profile that used the exact same username, had his picture, email address, and actual address. This had gone on for a few weeks, and the emails continued back and forth, with promises of eventual refunds and lies about lost shipments and all. So she looked up the local police department in the city, and they actually had an online fraud department. She told him the story and said they'd received numerous complaints about a scammer, that others had tracked items to the city, but we were the first with an address. He drove to his house, and he was effing there with a garage full of sports cards and stuff. He basically got behind and started kind of an eBay Ponzi scheme where he'd get money from new auctions to pay back old auctions while taking cash out and getting further and further behind. It was crazy stupid. I think he owed about $10,000 to dozens of people. He ended up getting arrested and was forced to have wages garnished to pay back people and got community service. We got our money back, but it took a few months. Good old Yahoo profiles, giving away user data since the beginning of the internet. Glad you got your money back from eBay. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.